Michael looked around the apartment. The previous tenants had done a good job. There were cigarette butts everywhere. The place smelled of tobacco smoke, and it was impossible to breathe. But it didn't bother Michael much. Any apartment could be resuscitated if only there was the will. And Michael was also of the opinion that everything could be sold, even air. "Have you invited the cleaners yet?" he asked his colleague who was standing next to him and looking at the horror. "Yes, they're on their way. And these drunks, you have already taken a long time ago. It's just a matter of time. Michael's been handling this kind of dirty money for over 8 years. He had a college degree, and now he's a realtor. In this country, people in this profession make a dime in the beginning and after that too." Michael didn't want to make little money for half his life, so he joined the so-called realtor gang. They worked like regular realtors, but they had one thing in common: often such work was illegal. However, quite easily, Michael found alcoholics, people who were no longer able to somehow take care of their non-privatized apartment. Drunk them and took them out into the open field, and then bribed notaries and registered his colleagues and dubious friends in these apartments. The scheme worked smoothly. Yes, the activity was dangerous and illegal, but it brought good money. After registration, these people private and sold these apartments, and then divided the honestly earned money. Everything worked like a Swiss watch. "Still, I'm glad I found you once," sighed the ringleader when they decided to celebrate another successful deal. "Such determination and charisma are to be envied. Yes, there are better guys than you, but you have great potential. You'll go far in the future, I know that." Michael learned every day from his older comrades which tenants to avoid and which ones won't cause problems. Who to sell these apartments to later, how to bribe notaries, all these questions had quite sane answers. Soon, Michael himself began to give lessons to less experienced comrades. "What if the police?" Jack asked one day sitting next to Ree. "What would the police do to you?" answered Michael with a question. "I'm a real swindler, it's a felony fraud, so Jack, you seem like a smart guy, and if you're smart, it won't get to the police." "That's not an explanation, and you don't need an explanation. You don't get arrested, you'll be fine." Soon, Michael was out of the business. No, his scamming schemes didn't end there. He just moved on to a new niche. Over the course of 8 years, he was able to build up a nice capital, but that wasn't enough for him. He didn't want to stop there. After all, if the system of life could be broken, he could continue to play cat and mouse. No one ever suspected him of these frauds. The people who made deals with him were happy with their new apartment, and those homeless people whom Michael's friends took somewhere in the countryside or in the fields somehow lived out their lives there. Michael didn't really care about them, though. The only thing he cared about in life was money, and luckily for him, he knew how easy it was to get it. Not hunching over in a stuffy office, ruining his posture, and killing his health. A great idea had popped into his head one day. Michael immediately started to realize it. "So you want to offer me such a sum of money for this case?" the boss of the company asked. "Let's be honest, you won't continue to build one way or the other. I am well aware of your current financial situation. Eventually, your money will run out, and the company will go bankrupt. And I'm offering you a win-win," Michael reasoned with a smirk. He knew that sooner or later, this man would agree to the deal. "What makes you think we're on the verge of bankruptcy? The company's doing just fine. I have connections, and smart people have whispered in my ear about the situation you're in. It's just a matter of time, and soon you'll be out of business. You know that very well. And I'm offering you the chance to save your hides and possibly your families. You think that's legitimate? How can it be legal? Don't be ridiculous." "Of course, it isn't, but I'm sure you wouldn't pass up a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Do you have a family?" "I do." "How are you going to provide for it when you're up to your eyeballs in debt and credit?" "That's none of your business," the manager cut in. "I was just guessing," Michael shrugged. "You know there are plenty of companies like yours out there, and smart people wouldn't turn down an offer like that. I'll give you an hour to think about it." Michael left the office knowing he'd be called back in an hour, so he waited. In fact, it happened even faster than he had anticipated. He was called back in 15 minutes. Ree, very satisfied, walked into the office and sat down again in that cozy white chair. Good, but why do you want to do this? Don't you have anywhere to put your money? The man asked incredulously. That shouldn't concern you. The deal is good for you, that's all you should care about. The manager struggled some more, but then gave up and said firmly and confidently, I agree to this deal. Good, Michael rejoiced. Then we'll sign the necessary documents, and you're free to go. Michael had been hatching this plan in his head for a long time, and now he began to act. He bought the so-called cream at a terribly cheap price, and the construction companies didn't mind. They were on the verge of bankruptcy, from which Ree, you could say, saved them. These non-existent apartments he planned to now put on sale and competently organizing an advertising campaign to earn a fairly large amount of money. Having signed all the documents for the developers, Michael paid the agreed amount of money and was left with these apartments, which did not even have walls yet. It was time to act. A man in his mid-50s walked into the office. He had a couple of gray hairs on his head. Michael invited him to sit down and asked the receptionist to pour coffee for him. Good afternoon, are you here for the apartment? Michael asked. Yes, of course, what else? I was just looking for a suitable apartment to move into and came across your website, replied the man. Great, I hope you are aware that these apartments will be ready only in a year or two. It's a new building, you know. Yes, of course, the scheme makes perfect sense to me. They don't just call it a long shot, you know. Many acquaintances say that you should be very careful when choosing a developer. After all, it's such money. But I've read various reviews about your company. I'm happy with everything. Michael wanted to cry with happiness. Of course, all these reviews were written by robots or people who did not care what to write reviews on. It's all about the money. Michael had it all figured out down to the smallest detail. Yeah, I agree with you. A real estate developer has to be safe, but don't worry, we'll have everything documented and notarized. Let me show you our plans. Michael unfolded a brochure in front of the man with apartments and the future look of the house. The client immediately fell for the colorful design and paid the full amount after an hour of conversation and then half an hour with the notary. All the fake documents were drawn up and the first money was received. Ray was beyond happy. His ingenious plan was working. He hadn't even thought before that there could be such simpletons as this man in the world. In the meantime, the line to the office for the bargain was already lining up. In one day, Michael was able to get more than 20 million. Of course, all of this was not counting the company that Michael's friends were employees of. Each played his own role. There was no reason to be suspicious, and there was no reason to be suspicious. Mom, I'm home, Laura announced loudly as she stood on the mat in the hallway. She started to take off her shoes, and her honey, why are you back so early? Mrs. Anastasia wondered. They canceled my class. They said there was no point in having a history lesson now anyway, since no one was taking the exam. We'd better study at home for the subjects we need. Oh, I didn't even have time to make soup yesterday. I had a lot of work to do. I slept till 10 o'clock, but still, can I afford a day off? Laura smiled. Oh, Mom, you have no idea how some people dream of a day off in the middle of the week. I envy you. But your mother works on Sunday while all the normal people sleep in their beds. That's true too, Laura grinned. I'll go while I'm doing my homework. Call me when something is ready. Anastasia called her daughter for lunch an hour later. The soup is amazing, Mom, admired Laura. I still don't understand why Dad left you. You see, nothing these men do not understand, do not know what is true happiness, Anastasia joked. Laura ate some more soup, snacking on bread, and then she continued, Listen, Mom, you know that I have a birthday in a month. 18 years old as it is. Do you mind if I invite some friends to our house? Oh yes, of course, I don't mind, Mother smiled. I could even go. No, don't go. My friends love you very much. Stay and have fun with us. Have a nice meal. I'll be the only one cooking this day. Are you sure? I could go to the cottage or go to Liz's. Mom, I'm sure I convinced her daughter. I love you madly, and I want you to spend this important day with me. You should know what getting you intrigued her mother. All the girls would die of envy, new makeup, dresses, perfume. Laura started guessing. It's not the same, better. I'm sure you'll appreciate my gift. Anastasia had been sitting outside the office with the wooden door for half an hour. She still hadn't been summoned. Finally, she was allowed in. Good afternoon, my name is Ree, he smiled. Good afternoon, and I'm Anastasia. I'm sure you'll be the one to help me make the best gift for my daughter. I'm all ears. Anastasia made herself comfortable in the chair and began. I would like to buy a one-bedroom apartment somewhere on the 15th floor. The main thing is that from the windows you can see the sunset. Do you still have one of those? Sure, Michael answered confidently. Then I'm ready to sign. Would you like to hear the price? Anastasia was embarrassed and ducked her head. You see, I wanted to show you something more valuable than money. Michael was intrigued. He approached Anastasia, who was pulling something out of her purse. She pulled out a small wooden box and showed it to Ree. What's in it? The man inquired. Anastasia smiled and then opened the box. The crook's eyes glittered. A blue stone shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow looked at him. It was framed with gold and small diamonds. It's a blue garnet, very rare in nature. This pendant is our family heirloom. I was going to pawn it, but then decided to show it to you first. Michael's eyes sparkled, and he tried to take the box, but Anastasia closed the lid and nearly pinched Michael's thin fingers. He immediately pulled his hand away and looked at the woman with a smile. I don't think you need to go to a pawn shop. We're willing to take this pendant as payment. Anastasia was very surprised at the offer, but it didn't bother her. Are you sure we can formalize this? Is it legal? Of course, it is. The notary is here for a reason, Damien. Anastasia looked at Damien. He was a real nerd. The bespectacled man sat on a stool with his black notebook and nodded like an idiot. That's your lawyer, Anastasia hesitated. Yes, Michael smiled. Then he moved a little closer to the woman and whispered, I know he looks like a schoolboy, but he works just fine. So shall we do it? Anastasia bit her lip. She always did that when she was nervous. Now she had a difficult and important decision to make. Ree, meanwhile, held out the necessary documents to her. I can give you some time to familiarize yourself. Is there anyone you need to consult? No, I'm going over the documents now. And wait, can't we look at the apartment first? Anastasia. I thought I mentioned that it's far away, so it's not ready. The house will be built within 2 years, but we're already having a lot of buyers. I understand, but the foundation's already there, the walls. Why don't we go there, and then I'll be happy to sign all the documents. Ree, of course, did not really like this idea because he did not want her to suspect something. But Anastasia didn't look like a very smart woman. She wasn't even embarrassed by the fact that Michael was willing to accept payment in stone. I don't think that would make sense. What's bothering you? I don't know. Would you like to be sure or something? Michael smiled. He stood up and pointed the woman toward the window. The windows overlooked just a building under construction. There was really only the foundation and a small portion of the walls. The construction had just begun. I can show you how we plan to do it, Michael offered. Anastasia scrutinized the building from the window. Ree didn't understand the point of such actions because the building was not yet presentable. He handed her various booklets with pictures of apartments, courtyards, and playgrounds. Michael wouldn't mind living in such a high-roid, but he realized that all those pictures would remain pictures. Yes, Anastasia answered confidently. A few minutes later, they signed the necessary documents, and Anastasia paid for the apartment with her expensive pendant with a rare stone. I hope my daughter will be happy in it, she was anticipating when she signed the contract. Thank you. Michael felt a little uncomfortable. Yes, he'd been a cheat all his life, but this situation suddenly hit him right in the heart. She seemed like a nice woman, and he didn't want to hurt her personally, but it's not his fault that everything in the world is based on money. I can't take it anymore, confessed the lawyer with glasses after Anastasia left. Can't what? Seriously, interrogated him lying to people. You're the ones keeping me here out of my own free will. Michael was furious at that last phrase. He stood up and said, not of your own free will. Who else would pay $50,000 a month to an ally like you? Doesn't anyone want you? No one, and I gave you a chance to earn your own money, but I'm sick of it. You'll be millionaires at this rate. This is a criminal case. Criminal. Damon stood up, collected his papers, and headed for the exit. Where are you going? Michael asked him in a nervous but stern voice. He never allowed himself to show weakness in front of his colleagues and subordinates. They mustn't think they had won or could somehow hurt the boss. Anywhere, and I'd rather work for food than work for you, Damon said his last words and left the office. Rhys stood in a store for a long time and then sat down in his chair. He realized that this was the end of it. It would be impossible to find another person with a notary license to forge documents in such a short time. The matter was further complicated by the fact that Damon could turn Michael into the police at any moment. Michael called his secretary over. Nellie, can you bring me our income statement, please? I need to know the final amount. A few minutes later, a huge folder lay on Michael's desk. The amount earned pleased Rhys. He realized it was safe to wrap up without anyone noticing. He withdrew all the money from the company account and transferred it to his card. After a few more minutes, he was already walking down the office, meeting the surprised faces of his coworkers. Michael, where are you going? A workmate asked him. I have to show a client a house. Michael tried to get out of it. A house? But we agreed we wouldn't show anyone the house. Didn't you explain that to her? I did, but she wanted to be sure. I'll just show her the building. She won't suspect a thing. Michael's coworker, on the other hand, seemed to suspect something. Max was suspicious of Michael and his things. All right, he answered uncertainly. Go. An hour later, Michael was already sitting in the airplane and preparing to leave the country. Max! Max! Shouted one of the employees running up to his friend. What's wrong? What are you yelling for? Michael escaped, stealing all the money. We have nothing left in our account. The doorbell rang almost every minute. Laura welcomed guests who brought her many gifts and flowers. Her best friend Bob, friend Sarah, and 5 other friends and classmates came. Laura walked each one to the living room and sat them on the couch. Her mother continued to prepare the cake, which she planned to finish making in an hour. Are you sure we need such a big cake? Laura laughed. We'll have to eat it for 3 more days. Mom, it's not a wedding. You're turning 18. You are an adult now. It's even more important than a wedding. So don't you dare stop me. The woman didn't give up. Laura smiled and went to her friends. While the dishes were cooking, they decided to play board games. My mom gave me earrings for my coming of age, Sarah complained. I hope your mother will be more creative. Even if my mother gives me a candy bar, I'll be happy. After all, the main thing is that I have her, Laura replied confidently. I agree, Bob supported her. Parents are only a part of our life. We should appreciate every moment with them. After all, one day, they will be gone, and all of us will regret that we did not tell them how much we love them, that we complained about gifts, and then that attention, their support, will be so missed. You know, Sarah continued angrily. My brother got a car for his birthday, a car. You can always buy a car for yourself, but you won't always be with your parents. You'll miss their hugs later, but it'll be too late. Okay, guys, Laura interrupted them. Actually, it's my birthday today, not awake. So stop talking about death and who's going to feel sorry for who. Yeah, sorry, Bob's embarrassed. Guys, the table's set and waiting for you to sit down. It came from the kitchen. Everyone immediately rushed to the table in the kitchen. Some of them hadn't eaten all day. eager to taste the delicious dish prepared by Lara's mother. She was a master at it. Thank you, Lara thanked her friend again. I'm glad you have the same opinion as I do. Now, let's go celebrate my day and have fun. Everyone sat down at the table. Someone had already snatched a sausage, someone was eating salad. Anastasia tapped her glass lightly with her knife so that everyone would pay attention to her. She stood up, raising her glass. I am so happy that we are all gathered together today to celebrate the birthday of the person most dear to us all, my daughter. Anastasia met Lara's gaze and didn't want to break the eye contact because she was addressing her. My little girl turns 18 today. This number means a lot to every person because he or she is entering adulthood full of adventures and problems. Of course, everyone laughed. It was both a harmless but proper joke. I know that my Lara is a very determined person, Anastasia continued. She achieves everything and always, never and nothing can get in her way. She can cope with all of life's problems. Let's drink to that. But not everyone here is 18. Can I have a soft drink? Bob was jokingly indignant. Everyone laughed, and then clinked glasses together. Half an hour into the meal, Anastasia disappeared, and then appeared with a white folder in her hands, tied with a pink bow. All the guests were very surprised by such a performance. Lara was especially surprised. She got up from her chair and approached her mother. Daughter, Anastasia began, I want to thank you once again for what I have. You have helped me all these years. These documents contain your gift. Lara took the folder and started to open it. She pulled out a blue file from there with the papers in it. After reading a few lines, Lara realized everything. Mommy. God, Mommy. Lara glowed with joy as she threw herself into her mother's arms. What's there? What's there? Friends asked, snatching the folder from each other. It's an apartment, joyfully shouted Lara. An apartment. Now you can gather there with friends every day. Laughing, Anastasia added, Anastasia, without your dishes, there is no point in gathering there. Bob praised her mom. Mom cried with happiness, Lara, thank you, thank you. You deserve it, Anastasia replied gently. The next morning was the happiest of Lara's life. She got up early, put on some music, brewed some coffee, and made delicious cheesecakes. Mom was still gone, but Lara knew she was very tired. They cleared the table for another 2 hours and washed the dishes afterward. An hour passed, 2, Mom still wouldn't come into the kitchen. Then Lara decided to surprise her. She put a couple of cheesecakes on a plate, poured her mother's favorite syrup over them, poured coffee, and with a tray in her hands went to her mother's room to arrange breakfast in bed for her. However, when Lara opened the door to her mother's room, the tray nearly fell from her hands. Her mother was sitting on the bed with a lost face, watching television, with tears in her eyes. Lara immediately put the breakfast tray on the table and ran up to her mother. Mom, what's wrong with you? Are you, what? Lara looked at the television screen. The news was talking about some people being detained, but it was still unclear how this concerned her mother. Anastasia was silent and paying no attention to her daughter. Lara was loosening her up and trying to get her mother to look at her. Mom, shouted Lara once more nervously. Only after this shout, Anastasia looked at her daughter. Her mother's face was swollen, her eyes red from crying, her hands were trembling. Mommy, what happened? What did you see? Did something happen in the city? Did someone die, Mommy? Answer me. I'm so stupid, Anastasia replied in a trembling voice as she continued to cry. Now the tears were rolling down onto her daughter's pajamas. Mom, explain exactly what happened. No, first, give me a sedative. Lara jumped out of bed, ran to look for a sedative in the medicine cabinet. She found it quickly enough and soon returned to her mother. When she took the pills with water and calmed down a little, she sighed and began her heartbreaking story. They tricked me, my daughter, cheated. Aren't they ashamed? Who cheated? I wanted to make you happy, and they knew it all, but they didn't stop me. Egotists, thieves, scum. Mom, be more specific. I don't understand anything. Didn't I buy your apartment? Yes, you did. Why? What's wrong with it? You watch the news. Laura looked at her mother in disbelief and then turned on the TV. The news reported that members of a gang of swindlers had been arrested. They deceived people by selling them non-existent apartments. The circumstances are being investigated. Mom, what does it mean? Laura asked excitedly. I bought an apartment from this real estate development company. They offered such beautiful views from the window, and I didn't even suspect a thing. How stupid of me. Who sold you the apartment? Laura stood up abruptly. We're going to the police right now. Right now. Who's going to help us? They don't know all the details yet. We'll file a complaint. We should get our money back. You're probably not the only one who fell for this scam. Come on, let's go to the police. Laura started to gather her mother. She gathered all the necessary documents, took the folder with the contract for the apartment, and took her mother out. They got into the car and drove to the nearest police station. Is this your signature? The investigator asked Anastasia, pointing to the document. Yes, it's mine, Anastasia sobbed, but I didn't think they had anything. It's just an ordinary company. It says here that you didn't pay with money at all, but with something valuable, a pendant. That didn't bother you a little? But afterward, I thought that's a good way to pay. What difference does it make if I take it to a pawn shop or pay for it right away? Mrs. Anastasia, in this country, we only pay with money. Where did you get the information that you could pay for an apartment with a pendant? I don't know, Anastasia continued to sob. The investigator handed her a glass of water. Go outside for some air, then come back, and we'll find out, I promise. The guard kindly opened the door for Anastasia. Her daughter met her in the corridor. What's going on there? How is it? Her daughter peppered her with questions. Everything is bad, honey. I'm the fool. An adequate person would not give the pendant, which was passed from generation to generation, to a crook. No one's going to make it up to me. It's all my fault. I'm sorry, Laura. I robbed you of your apartment and your family inheritance. Mom, what are you talking about? Laura tried to cheer up her daughter. You're not the only victim of these things. They'll be found. They'll get what they deserve. You'll be compensated. They sat down in the waiting room and waited for something. After half an hour, one of the employees came up to them and told them that they had better go home. But what do you mean, go home? But the investigator said that we would continue the conversation. Anastasia was indignant. He has already made certain conclusions. We'll call you when a little more is known. We'll do everything we can to make sure you're compensated for the damage, but they won't return the family jewel, the mother cried. The police officer said nothing more and left, leaving the poor family to endure the grief. The next days were very quiet. Anastasia jumped up in the middle of the night and screamed from nightmares. She drank sedatives. After a week of these torments, the results of stress and sleepless nights were already visible. Laura also had a hard time. Not only was she preparing for exams every day, but she also had to do housework. Her mother couldn't even get out of bed, and someone had to cook dinner, clean the floor, so that the apartment wouldn't be covered with dust and dirt afterward. Wake up! Bob woke Laura up. The bell had rung a long time ago. Laura raised her head and looked sleepily at her friend. You slept through a whole class. Mrs. Irene gave you a bad mark and is calling your parents to school, Bob informed her. Laura slowly threw her notebooks into her briefcase, muttering to herself, let her call, no one would come anyway. Laura, how much did you sleep today? Bob asked. 2 hours, Laura whispered. Okay, it's Friday. How much sleep have you gotten this week? 15 hours, Laura whispered. What do you care? Laura threw her backpack on and walked to the other office. What do you mean, what do I care? Bob was indignant. I'm your best friend, and in the future, maybe your fiancé. I don't care about your stupid jokes, Bob, Laura replied with disgust. I have enough problems without you. Bob realized that his friend did not want to make contact, so he simply blocked her way forward. Get away! Laura shouted. Not until you explain what's going on. Get back, you idiot. I'll call the teacher. I may be an idiot, but I'm not going to step away. Come on, tell me everything. Lara stopped, pushed with her foot, and exhaled. All right, I'll tell you. They walked over to the window. Lara put her things on the windowsill and only then began. Do you remember what I got for my birthday? But how can you forget something like that? An apartment. Well, this apartment is not an apartment at all. Mom bought it from scammers. They just collected money from people for apartments that aren't built yet, and then they just ran away. Well, not exactly. Turns out there was a ringleader that my mom made the deal with. His name was Ree. He had his own crew, but Michael betrayed his own. He collected all the stolen money and left for parts unknown, and his colleagues decided to take revenge on him, to expose all their dark deeds. But they have to answer for it. There should be compensation. The authorities promised they'd look into it, but I don't really believe them. It's complicated by the fact that my mother paid with the family jewel. There was no money, so there's nothing to pay back. It's a nightmare. My mom is under so much stress. She doesn't drink, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep well, has stopped cooking or doing anything around the house. She was fired from her job due to multiple absences. She is developing a very real depression, and I don't know how to help her. Maybe she should talk to a specialist, a psychologist, for example. He'll solve the problem. So, I've been trying to get her to come in for at least one appointment, just to talk. She absolutely refuses. She doesn't want to. That's all. And that doesn't make me feel any better either. Things that she used to do around the house, I do now. And when I finish my homework, I have 2 hours to sleep. Bob put his arm around Lara and then said, Lara, I'm your friend and I'm willing to help you. This weekend, persuade your mother to go to a psychologist and I'll help you with your homework. Please don't refuse my help. I understand how hard this is for you, and I want to help you, okay? When Lara returned home, the first thing she did was go to her mother. She looked haggard and exhausted. Her bruises under her eyes were getting bigger every day. She hadn't bathed in days, her hair was greasy. She resembled a homeless person who had lost everything. And all these days she watched her TV nonstop. Mom, Lara whispered, entering Anastasia's bedroom, could you talk to me? The mother didn't answer. She was like a zombie. Before, Lara had walked away after such disregard for her existence, but this time she couldn't take it anymore. Mom, Lara screamed, Mommy. Anastasia didn't turn her head. It was like she'd lost her hearing. Lara was sobbing. The annoying voices of reporters and journalists spoke in the background. Lara was almost losing her mind. And at one point, she made up her mind. She went to the nightstand, grabbed a desk lamp, and threw it at the TV with all her might. The TV fell to the floor with a crash. Only then did Anastasia look at her daughter. She didn't say anything, just stared at her with her zombie-like, dumb look. It was as if she had become a vegetable that neither sees nor hears anything. Nothing bothers her, she just exists by inertia. Lara started shaking her mother to bring her to her senses. Mom, come back to me. Wake up. Wake up. I'm here, your daughter's here. Mom, it's night. Should I go to bed? Anastasia asked calmly. Lara wiped away her tears and looked at her mother in shock. Has this person completely lost her mind? Had she already forgotten that she had a daughter? Mom, do you remember who I am? She asked tearfully. Lara, what kind of stupid questions are these? Smiled Mom, wiping the tears that flowed down her daughter's cheeks. The gesture made Lara cry even more. Her mother remembered her. It had been so long since Lara had seen her smile. Mom, let's you and I go to the doctor, Lara suggested. He can help you, honey, Anastasia replied gently. Sure, Mom. Lara put her mother to bed and began to clean up the effects of her stress. That TV had cost a lot of money, which they were having trouble with. Lara wanted to kill herself for such a breakdown. In the morning, Lara opened the door to Bob ringing. "What are you doing up so early?" she asked. "We're still asleep, but we didn't have a set time, so I thought I'd come early." "Am I right?" "No," Laura answered tactfully. "I haven't even woken my mom up yet. But I can leave." Laura rolled her eyes, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, and dragged him into the house. "Go to my room. I don't want my mother to see outsiders, especially in this condition." Laura pointed him to the right door, trying to wake her mom herself. "Mom," she said softly. "Mom, it's time to get up. We have plans today, Mom." "Where are we going, my daughter?" Anastasia asked. "We're going to the hospital, Mom," Laura smiled, despite the fact that she wanted to cry in her heart. "They will help you there." As soon as Laura had completed all the documents through the registrar, Anastasia was taken away by the attending doctor. After an hour of waiting, the doctor came back to Laura and gave her some not-so-good news. "Your mother has a brain tumor. We don't know what can cause it at such an early age, but the consequences are very dire. You slowly lose yourself, your personality. You may forget to eat or go to the toilet. After that, headaches, and then seizures begin. The danger is that your mother has stage 3. It is at this stage that a person can lose their memory and do the strange things you told me about. Stage 3 is almost the end. It means there's a chance of a cure, but it's slim. I recommend keeping your mom here for further evaluation." "Of course," Laura replied confidently. "If it helps, how can I be against it? In such a case, soon everything will be formalized, and you can be free." Laura still couldn't get the key into the lock. Her hands were shaking. Apparently, Bob heard the sounds and hurried to open the door to the returning mistress. "Where's your mom?" the first thing Bob was worried about at the hospital. "I gave her to the hospital," in a tired monotone voice, Laura replied. "Are you all right?" he inquired gently. "It'll do, of course, I've been better, but at least my mom is getting help now, and I should be happy about that." They went into the kitchen where Laura put the kettle on the stove. She sat down at the table and covered her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry," Bob tried to support her. "Remember when you told me not to hang around your apartment?" Laura looked at him tiredly. "Did you break something?" she moaned. "Nothing, I just took the TV to the repair shop." "Did your mom break it?" "No, it was me." "Why?" "My mom was really sick last night. She was completely out of touch with reality because she was chained to that TV the whole time. I had no choice but to do what had to be done." "How much did they charge for the repairs?" Nothing. I have an uncle who works there. I explained the situation and he'll do it for free." "Thank you, but you shouldn't have." "Why not?" "I just wanted to help." "I understand, but I'm the kind of person who hates to accept help. It's easier for me to do it myself." "You've taken on an impossible burden, Laura. Let me help you financially, if not morally." "My God, and in 3 months, we have exams and graduation. Please concentrate on your studies." "I know it's hard, but I'll help you any way I can, Bob." "Thank you. You're the best friend I've ever had." From that day on, things got better. Laura stopped skipping classes, started getting enough sleep, but there was only one thing left in her life, her mother. Every few days, Laura went to the hospital to check on her and her condition. The doctors didn't give good odds. The doctor spoke of the prognosis. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, the woman was getting worse and worse. One day, Laura was going through old boxes in a fit of nostalgia and found a lot of photo albums. They were all old, and some of the photos were hard to see. Laura decided that her mom had to see this album, so the next day she rushed to her mother's room. "Mom, hello," Laura said. "Hello," Anastasia replied casually. She looked happy, but Laura knew why she was, and that fact upset her. The doctor gave her special pills, which, of course, are very harmful to the nervous system, but the person really looks healthy and alive, but only looks, and here I am reading, Anastasia smiled. The doctor said that it improves memory and cognitive functions of the brain. Lara smiled sincerely and then sat down next to her mother's couch and pulled out a few albums from her backpack. I'm here to refresh your memory too, Lara said. They began to look at the album, but suddenly Anastasia grabbed the album and flipped to the very end. She ran her fingers over some of the pictures as if they were imbued with memories. I haven't shown you these pictures before, Mom said. I don't know, I was afraid or something. Did you know that our family comes from a family of very rich people? No, Lara sighed in response. Well, they died, but not all of them. Your great-grandfather survived, and there was nothing left of their manor, only ashes. But your great-grandfather managed to hide something very valuable. Today, his mother had a pendant his fiancée gave her as a wedding present. It was made of real gold, and inside was a very rare blue stone. You know, right now it reminds me of that necklace from the movie Titanic. What was it? The heart of the ocean? Lara was shocked that her mom remembered everything down to the smallest detail. However, it wasn't surprising. Titanic was Anastasia's favorite movie. This pendant is in a drawer in a wooden box. It's so precious to me, you have no idea. It was only at that moment that Lara realized which pendant she was talking about, the pendant that was the rent, or rather the heir. Mom, Lara tried to gently hint at Lara's mistake. That pendant, are you sure it's at home? Of course, I haven't worn it once, Mom. We don't have that pendant. I'm sorry, Anastasia was silent for a minute, trying to remember what had happened, why the pendant had disappeared from her rounded eyes. I could tell she remembered. She stretched out sadly. Well, yes, Mom had cried. Lara was unable to contain her emotions at the sight of her mother who was simply melting before her eyes. Mom, I love you so much. I love you too, my daughter, smiled Mother. I am so glad that I had you. Lara walked out of the room with her mascara running and met the doctor who was talking to the girl at the front desk. My mother, how is her condition? Lara inquired, wiping her eyes. The doctor looked at her with a serious look and then offered to move to a less crowded place to his office. We are doing everything we can, but the disease is progressing, the doctor informed her. But how is that possible? Lara tried to find out. She was fine until a month ago, and now her condition is getting worse. We can't say for sure what's causing it. It could be genetic, it's been triggered by stress. Your mother needs support and care now more than ever. Will that help? It'll help her morally, but I don't want you to get your hopes up. The prognosis is bleak. We're doing everything we can, but a good outcome is unlikely. You have to be prepared for that, Lara nodded. I'm terribly sorry, the doctor added. Your doctors, do something, I'm begging you. My mom is still young, she has to live. I promise you we will do everything possible from our side, and from your side, we are waiting for support and moral help. I heard you. Days passed. It seemed that there were not 24 hours in a day but only 2 miserable hours which Lara spent on trips to her mother. Anastasia faded before her eyes from the cheerful hostess who can cook everything in the world, remained only a semblance of that kind mother. Anastasia began to eat less. She had no desire to talk or have any contact with people, even her own daughter, she often ignored, pretending to be asleep when everyone realized she was awake. This all took a heavy toll on Lara's psyche and physical condition. Her grades had deteriorated again, exams were only months away. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and now in 3 days Lara was due to graduate. She was already determined to spend it without her mother, but she didn't realize that fate was preparing a much more difficult test for her than she had anticipated. Lara borrowed money from a friend and bought herself the cheap dress 2 weeks before the prom. She had gotten it into shape and it looked even better than a dress from some Brielle salon. Lara was proud of herself, so ready to gradu. Bob texted her at night. You know, this graduation would have brought me a lot more positive emotions if it wasn't for the situation with my mom. Lara answered him. I understand, hang in there, remember that I'm with you. However, even this support did not save Lara. At 3 o'clock in the morning, she received a call from the hospital. The tired voice of the nurse on the phone said, "Your mother was very ill today. We had to perform an operation. We fear she may not live to see the morning." Lara jumped out of bed, and 10 minutes later she was rushing to the hospital. She rushed into the room and saw her dying mother. She was lying on the couch, breathing through a tube. "Mom," whispered Lara, approaching the closest person in her life. "Mom, I'm here. The cancer is about to kill her," the doctor said behind her back. "She may not recognize you anymore, but you try." "Mommy, it's me, Lara, your daughter, remember?" cried Lara, clutching her mom's hand. "Lara," Anastasia marveled, "Lara, my daughter." "Yes, Mommy, your daughter," answered Lara in a trembling voice. "I remember you," the woman smiled and coughed. "Honey, he's taking me away." "Who's taking you away?" "Who's taking you?" "Mommy?" "God, he's already waiting for me. When I was asleep, he told me to say goodbye to you." Lara turned away to hold back the scream that wanted to burst from her chest. "Say goodbye," Lara smiled, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Well, let me say goodbye, Lara, me, I love you," Anastasia moaned in a weak voice. It was obvious how hard it was for her to speak and strain her voice. "Mom, I love you very much too," kissed her daughter's hands. "I don't want to die," tearfully added the woman in a low voice, "but you know I believe in heavenly peace. If God wants it so, I will do his will. I'm so afraid of oblivion, of this eternal darkness. Mom, you're going to the most wonderful place in the world. Only good people go there, and you're going to go there. It's going to be so warm and fun. Warm, I want warmth, but I'm cold." "Yes, Mommy, it'll be warm, and there'll be no suffering. You'll get to meet your mommy, you'll get to meet your daddy. It's the most incredible place on earth." Lara noticed that Anastasia was no longer answering. She just lay there with her eyes open, which were staring up at the ceiling. "Mom," tugged the woman. "Lara," the mom shifted to yelling. Lara didn't want to accept what she was seeing with her own eyes, but through the piercing pain, she squeezed her mother's hand and leaned into her body, from which at that moment, her soul flew away. "Mommy," swallowing the lump in her throat, Lara whispered, "I love you so much." There were so many tears that the whole sheet, which enveloped her mother at one moment, became wet as if it had just been washed. The pain Lara felt at that moment could not be described. It felt like someone was slowly squeezing her heart. Her chest ached wildly, and she wanted to scream, but there was no strength to do so. The machine beeped sharply. The doctors rushed into the room and stopped a few centimeters away from the couch where the late Anastasia was now lying. They dared not move out of respect for their daughter. They stood with their hands clasped together and heard those quiet sobs of Lara, who couldn't tear herself away from her mother's body. Lara didn't know how much time had passed. Maybe it was minutes or hours. Someone put their cold hand on her shoulder. "Lara, you have to go," a man's voice almost whispered. Lara stood up, staggered, and stepped aside. 3 medics covered her mother's body with a black blanket. They disconnected her from all life support machines and took her to the morgue. Someone whispered. Someone said something to Lara's face. Maybe orders, only she didn't respond. Then she was almost forcibly removed from the room. She didn't wake up until she was in the waiting room. Before that, she felt like she was in a dream. Now it's like she's back to life. "Are you okay?" the nurse sitting next to her asked her. Lara didn't answer. She had no energy for anything. "Would you like a cab?" the nurse offered kindly. "If it's not too much trouble," Lara answered. Lara had always wondered since she was a child, why did it always rain on morning days? Does the weather know when to cry and suffer? On this day, standing outside the temple where her mother was being buried, Lara thought about this question. It wasn't just rain, it was a real downpour. Bob was standing next to her, holding an umbrella. At this moment, while all the graduates were celebrating the beginning of their new lives, Lara was saying goodbye to a huge part of her former life. The coffin was brought out of the temple, carried to the hearse. Lara never would have thought that her high school graduation would be remembered by this very event. The pink dress she had bought for graduation looked eerie among the black mass of people. The relatives of the deceased Anastasia were leering at Lara and her outfit. "I hope at least my mom likes me dressed like this," Lara remarked. "Your mom would want you in a dress like that, I'm sure she would," Bob backed her up. "Or maybe I'm just too young and stupid to realize the seriousness of the situation. You know, I still can't get over the fact that I'm an orphan at 18, Bob didn't answer, and words wouldn't have helped. Instead, he moved closer to Lara and hugged her as tightly as he could. "I'm with you," he said quietly. Mom was buried. A part of Lara went underground with her forever. Things would never be the same again. Lara would never again be able to eat her mother's delicious cheesecakes or laugh with her while watching a movie. There would never be those heartfelt conversations on Friday nights in the kitchen. Lara will never see her mom smile again. All of that is forever lost. Lara walked home to the sound of drunken teenagers celebrating graduation, the rumble of fireworks, and the enthusiastic shouts of her parents. She wrapped herself in a warm sweater and raced home as fast as she could. Silence. This apartment had never been like this before, only at night, and it was almost night now. So Lara imagined that her mom had just fallen asleep. And she couldn't sleep. She brewed herself some strong tea, took the old album out of the closet, and began to leaf through page after page. Her breathing was interrupted, then her fists clenched with anger when Lara saw the pendant on her grandmother's chest. "I'm there, Mom," proudly and confidently she whispered, "I will avenge you." Days passed, the fraud case went quiet. The investigators kept promising to continue the search, but Lara had little faith in these words. It was time to send applications to various universities. Many of her classmates decided to stay in their hometown, not to go anywhere. But this story was definitely not about Lara. She firmly decided to move directly to the capital. "And what are you going to do?" Bob was indignant. "Steady, Bobby, steady." Bob continued to swing Lara on the swing but was very angry at this news. "Why do you have to go there?" "Stay here," he pleaded with her. "What's keeping me here? Or who's keeping me here? My mom's dead. I'm an orphan. What about me?" Bob said, offended. Lara paused the swing and looked at her friend. "And I can't stay here. This place is weighing on me. Every day I see places I used to see completely differently. This is where my personal tragedy happened. You can't run away from your feelings. Maybe it'll make me feel better. This place won't weigh on me anymore, won't be a huge weight on my shoulders. Lara, you know why I'm in pain. Why do you do this? You're hurting me, Bob. You know the answer too. Our feelings are not reciprocated. I'll never be able to see you as a guy, and you'll never be able to see me as a normal friend. So what? That's it? The end of our friendship? I don't know. I think it's the beginning of something new. The sea is cleaner and more beautiful after a storm. But I'm not the sea, and you're not the storm. The sea is life, the storm is a tragedy that happened to me. I'll leave. It'll be easier for me. Okay, fine, Bob replied angrily, do as you please. He gave his friend one last glance and walked away with his hands in his pockets. Lara shouted after him again but made no attempt to catch up with him. She realized that this was really the end. Nothing could save their friendship if it could be called friendship at all. Bob had just been chasing her all these years. She had turned it into a game called friendship. Lara realized she was hurting the guy badly, but there was nothing she could do about it. She couldn't reciprocate the man, no matter how good he was, no matter how many good deeds he did. She would never look at Bob as anything other than a friend. She knew she had many chances of getting into the capital. Her certificate shone and her exam scores spoke for themselves. Not only that, but she knew French as well as a native speaker, and it was all thanks to her mother who had taken care of her education in time. Thank you, Mom. Lara looked at the ceiling. Sending documents to 5 selected universities, all she had to do was wait for a reply. Laura realized that some university would definitely choose her. So she didn't waste time and started to buy the apartment which she needed to sell as soon as possible. "Please, Pete, why do you want to sell the apartment?" asked the woman at the viewing. She looked like a swan, her posture was straight, and her neck was stretched out. As a result, it created the image of a formidable and fair businesswoman. "I'm leaving for good, so I don't see the point of leaving my possessions here," Laura explained calmly. Again, the stranger stretched out. "I don't know, this apartment is not worth that much, at most 3 times less. Do you agree?" "No," answered harshly, "but you said it was negotiable." "That's not bargaining, that's wanting a freebie. You cut my price by more than half." "Are you out of your mind?" The woman clacked her heels and walked toward the exit. "You won't find a buyer at this rate. Good luck with the sale of the apartment, and I'll find adequate sellers," she whispered and slammed the front door loudly. However, Laura did not suffer long with the apartment. She soon found people who were happy to buy such an apartment for such an attractive price. These people turned out to be a young couple. They were just looking for a nice apartment in which they could renovate to their liking. "Jeremy, that's a nice kitchen," the girl admired it. "It won't even have to be renovated. It will fit perfectly into the concept of our apartment." "Yes, dear, that's right," answered the tired husband. "When can we move in?" He turned to Laura. "I'm leaving here in a week. The papers will be ready in a couple of days. First, you pay half of the amount, and then another part when I already give you the keys and leave. That's fine with us. Then text us as soon as the papers are ready. It's a deal," Laura smiled. 3 days later, she received letters from the universities. Each of them approved her application and gave her an opportunity to get on the budget. Laura decided to choose the best win-win option. The letter also said that she would be provided with a dormitory. So now Laura didn't worry about housing. "Are you sure?" Bob asked her, trying not to meet her gaze. "I'm sure," Laura answered confidently and with a smile as she left the house with her suitcases. "Laura, before the new tenants arrive, can I talk to you?" Laura nodded, and they walked away towards the bushes. "Laura, our last meeting ended on a bad note," Bob said, "but I don't want you to hold a grudge. I don't like that kind of innuendo, and yeah, I realize I screwed up. I shouldn't have pushed you so hard. I always knew this friendship would always be just a friendship. I'm so sorry." "You're a fool, Bob. I'm not the least bit upset with you, and I never have been. I know you're sad to leave me, but I'm sad too. I want to leave this place, but I don't want to leave the people who live here. These bright, friendly friends, neighbors, and regular passers-by. This town will forever be etched in my memory. I will miss this house and these hometown streets. It's really hard for me to part with it, but I have to move on. I'm going into my future, and I'm not going to stop. Your mom would be very happy to hear you say that," Bob smiled. "I know, Bobby." A black car pulled up to the house, the doors opened, and the same young couple walked up to Laura and Bob. They were anticipating the moment when they would be handed the keys to their apartment. "Good afternoon," Jeremy said. "Hello, we're ready to move in now. How are you doing?" Laura pointed to her suitcase and car on the sidewalk. "I'm ready to move in too," Laura replied. "In that case, check the balance on your card." All the funds have already been transferred. Laura opened her phone and confirmed what Jeremy had just said, took the keys out of her pants pocket, and handed them to the man. "Good luck." Laura said goodbye to them and headed to Bob's car, which was to take her to the airport. They made it there without adventure. Bob helped Laura to register the tickets and check in the luggage. When boarding was announced, Laura noticed a tear rolling down Bob's cheek, but the guy immediately brushed it away and pretended that he wasn't sad at all. "Is everything okay?" Laura asked quietly as they stood in line. "Yeah, thanks for being my friend. Hey," she shoved him in the shoulder. "I'll still be here." "Yeah, of course you are." Bob put a smile on his face. They approached the stewardess who was checking tickets. "This is the end of our journey. Goodbye," Laura said. Bob left without waiting for her friend's reaction. Laura walked across the aisle to the airplane and kept thinking, why Bob was the only person who had not turned his back on her, who had helped her to the end. Laura couldn't believe that their friendship had come to an end, but as she had suspected, it was obvious. "Welcome," pronounced the girl who had accompanied Laura to the dormitory. "You're going to live with me and one other girl. You'll like it. We are very friendly and fun." Laura was not eager to take an active part in student life. She didn't care about parties or assemblies. She only came here to study, and she was driven by revenge. They entered the spacious room. The walls were painted a basic beige color. They were decorated with 3 paintings and embroidery, but what Laura liked best were the dream catchers above each bed. "Oh, I guess I forgot to introduce myself. Christina, Lara's chaperone and part-time roommate," laughed Christina. "I'm Laura, once again," she repeated, sat down on the bed, and was surprised by the softness of these mattresses. "I didn't think it would be so comfortable here. I usually imagined a dormitory with cockroaches and dirty floors, and there are." Another roommate who was sitting on her bed and filing her nails spoke up. "But definitely not in our building here though. They keep it clean and orderly, so don't think you'll be able to take the boys here." "I don't." Laura was embarrassed. "You can study here." Christina changed the subject to avoid an argument. She pointed to a chair by the window. "Actually, this room looked terrible when we came here with Rebecca, but in 2 years, we've cleaned it up pretty quickly." "So, you're a third year?" "Yes, I am," Rebecca replied just as grimly, continuing to file her nails. "See that embroidery on the wall?" Christina tapped her on the shoulder. "That's my work," she said proudly. Laura didn't settle into her new place very quickly. Christina did turn out to be a very friendly person, just like she said she would be, but there was a problem with Rebecca. She didn't make contact. It seemed as if she was disgusted by the mere sight of Laura. Laura did not understand the reasons for such hatred towards her, but she accepted the character of her neighbor. And then the studies began. Laura did not fully understand the essence of the specialty of hotel business, but she has always been attracted to the profession, which is associated with hotels and staff. In the future, she wanted to open a hotel herself. Every evening when Laura tiredly came home from school, she sat down at a desk, opened a textbook on financial literacy, and wrote everything she could. After 3 months of such labor, she realized where to invest her money, which she received from the sale of the apartment. All those months she spent minimal amounts that involved food and only personal care products. She had money, and it needed to be hidden somewhere, but she decided not to mindlessly invest it in a bank account. She took a smarter route and invested in currency. In the future, under favorable circumstances, it was possible to get much more than it was before. And since Laura didn't really need the money yet, she took the risk. "Where's Rebecca?" Laura asked as Christina entered the room. It was 11 o'clock, and Rebecca was still gone. "She's still at work," answered Christina. "We're in the middle of an internship." "Where do you work?" "At the Mirage Hotel. They only take third-year students there, but we didn't find out. We just needed to get an internship somewhere. To be honest, Rebecca and I don't even plan on working in hotels. My uncle made me do it." "That's the uncle who got us the internship. By the way, he owns the hotel." "Can't your uncle hire me too?" unexpectedly asked Laura. Christina raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Why would you? But I need a job, and this would be a great option, especially I, unlike you and Rebecca, want to work in hotels in the future." "Well, if that's what you want, I don't think my uncle would mind, but I'll have to ask. Let me go tomorrow and find out." "That's great, thank you." Laura lay down on the bed and tried to sleep, but it didn't work. The fragments of her mother's death, the image of that pendant, Laura's blood boiled with anger, but then she managed to pull herself together and black out. "Laura, Laura," a familiar voice called out from the university. Laura stopped and looked back. It was Christina, running with some paper. The neighbor stopped and, barely out of breath, said, "Uncle, my uncle allowed you to come to the interview. Does the position of a cleaning lady require an interview?" Laura joked. "Well, of course, Christina didn't get the joke. A job is a job, but I'm sure you'll be hired. They are just understaffed. One receptionist quit because she was pregnant, by the way. Imagine, she got pregnant by a hotel employee, and they weren't even married. I feel like my life won't be boring when I go to work at this hotel. Oh, there's so much gossip. It's a lot of gossip. Thank you, Christina. I'll go there tonight. Lara shifted from foot to foot. She was terribly nervous about the interview, but what could she be afraid of? Who wouldn't interview for a hall manager with 3 languages? Come in, there was a stern voice at the door. Good afternoon, this is Lara. You invited me for an interview. Lara started hesitantly. Why are you the third one at the door? Come here. A hotel receptionist should not be shy about anything. Lara smiled and sat down opposite Christina's uncle, whose name was Jack. She handed him everything she could, her resume, her graduation papers, her medical book. Okay, let's see. Jack began to examine the documents. After a few minutes, he asked, do you know French? Yeah, I've been learning it since I was a kid. I love that beautiful language, Lara answered. Jack gave her a scrutinizing look. Well, I can stop with you, he concluded. You're the best candidate. Can you work from today? What kind of shifts are there, night and day? Most students choose night shifts, it's easier. You don't get many visitors, you can sleep until you're called in. I'll take it. Jack was escorted into the lobby, where she was met by a young man of rather handsome appearance. Dakota, explain the rules to your new friend, Jack ordered him and left to go about his business. Dakota seemed like a very arrogant guy, at least until Lara heard his soft, melodious voice. Shall we? He beckoned her over to him. Hi, he smiled, stuttering slightly. My name is Dakota, but you already knew that. Yes, Lara answered awkwardly, and my name is Lara, nice to meet you. So, tell me, how it works. Sure, let me give you a quick tour of our hotel first. Take a look around. Lara followed the advice and looked around the lobby. It was quite large and combined 2 floors at once. The structure was like a theater. There were balconies on the sides that went all the way to the top, and on the first floor, a few meters from the entrance, there was a fountain. How much did they pay? She said out loud, not thinking anyone would hear her. A lot, I think. Our hotel's pretty expensive. A room here costs $500 a night. That's the cheapest, $500 for one night. Lara's freaking out. Shoo, don't yell like that. First rule, no yelling here. We must always be polite and discreet, understand? Yes, they went to the second floor. This floor is all restaurants from top to bottom. This is where our guests meet, have breakfast or dinner. We have a stage over there. He pointed to the far side of the room. So, those spray cans are for beauty? Oh, like you haven't seen in the movies how important people go out on the balcony to discuss business. But those balconies in the movies go outside, and here they go into the lobby. I don't see anything wrong with that. The third and fourth floors were reserved for rooms, and on the fifth floor, there were several suites. Regular personnel were not allowed to enter there. At the end of the tour, they returned to the reception. Well, is everything satisfactory? Dakota joked. No, I quit. Goodbye, Lara replied sarcastically. As they stood at the front desk, no one was there. Dakota asked, aren't you a student? Yes, I'm studying hotel management. That's why I came to work here. I had to get money from somewhere. Anyway, why not make it work? Aren't you supposed to have school at 3? No, it's a shortened day. That's why I went to the interview. I didn't think I'd be hired right away. I'm planning on working at night. When will you study and sleep, then? That won't be a problem. I can manage my time. You can't even manage your time. Why don't you find an easier job? I didn't come here to listen to advice. I came here to work. Lara got angry. A young girl approached them. She looked like the realtor who wanted to cheat Lara out of her apartment. Good afternoon, can I help you? Dakota said. What do you mean? What can I do for you? Am I in a hotel or something? How can you help me? Give me a room, Laura looked at Dakota. They hadn't gotten a very polite guest, but that's often the case with those in the service industry. What kind of room were you interested in? Single, Laura joined the conversation. Young lady, do I look like a married woman? What kind of stupid questions are you asking me? Where is your manager? Call him here. No, please. Let's do it without the manager, Laura calmed her down. We just need to know your wishes. My wish is that you call the manager, shouted the visitor. Laura nodded to Dakota, and he left to fetch Peter. What kind of board do you have working here? The stranger was indignant. While they waited for the manager, girl, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to offend you, Dakota said. At that moment, Peter came up to them. He was dressed in a strict black suit with a tie and looked as important as this lady. Laura was sure that they would find a common language. Good afternoon. What happened? He inquired. Good? I do not think that this day can be called good. Your staff are horrible people. They ruined the mood. What kind of attitude is this? Mr. Peter, we weren't rude. It's all a blatant lie, said Dakota. The woman's eyes almost fell out of her eye sockets. She played indignation and anger perfectly. The guest is always right, strictly replied Dakota. To Peter, he approached the woman and asked her name. Alexandra, resentfully replied the guest. I am very happy to welcome you, Alexandra, Peter said in a sweet voice and even bowed slightly. We are sorry that such a situation happened. We want to express our deepest apologies and offer you one of the best rooms in our hotel. Alexandra immediately broke out in a satisfied smile. I guess that's what she wanted. Our staff will make the arrangements right away, Peter smiled. Yes, Dakota, yes, Mr. Peter. Dakota gave Laura a little push and began to arrange the room. In a couple of minutes, everything was ready. Have a nice vacation, wished the guest. Peter rebelled. Mr. Peter, why did you do that? Why didn't you believe us? Alexandra is a very famous person. She's the one who sets the opinion of the hotels. Have you ever wondered why we're treated the way we are? But that doesn't mean she can treat us like cattle, parried Dakota. So, Dakota, to her, you are inferior. Your people as rude as that sounds, and it is my duty to punish you. Punish you for what? Lara's starting to resent. We literally did nothing. There's no way for me to verify that you're both staying on night duty. You'll be scrubbing floors. What am I, a maid? Lara was indignant. I was hired as a junior administrator. If necessary, you'll be a maid and a washer and anything. Be thankful that I didn't fire you, Peter answered indifferently and left, not wanting to continue this unpleasant conversation. The hands of the clock approached 11 o'clock in the evening. Christina had already asked Lara about her absence from the dormitory. Lara had to answer honestly. She was grounded. Lara felt eerily uncomfortable sitting on the hard chair in the lobby. She didn't understand why she was being punished for nothing like a schoolgirl. 15 minutes ago, Dakota had left to go to the store to get food. Silence reigned in the lobby. Only the murmuring of the fountain broke the stillness. Lara felt very ill. It was probably because of the lack of food in her stomach. She was angry at the fact that she had several million in her account and she was spending her night sitting on a horrible chair in a hotel. Not the kind of job she dreamed of. And Dakota was still gone. And the darkness was making her afraid to be alone in such a large room. It seemed that at any moment some maniac could burst in here. Lara had seen a lot of horror movies about hotels, so she tried to push those thoughts away. And then a man entered the lobby, approached the reception desk, and said, I please a single room for 2 days. Lara immediately ran to the computer and began to register. Because of the low light, it was impossible to see the guest's face properly, but it was quite an adult man judging by his voice. Give me your passport, please, Lara asked. The man handed her the passport and waited. Lara turned on the desk lamp to get a better look at the data and was stunned. This face looked an awful lot like the one she had seen on the advertisements in her town. The same con man. Laura blinked a couple of times because she just couldn't believe her eyes. "Are you a Canadian citizen?" Laura clarified, trying not to panic. "Yes, I am," the man answered with an accent. He was good at impersonating a foreigner, but Laura understood. "Do you mind if I bring the lamp a little closer to you? I have to make sure it's you." "Sure." Now Laura was sure he was the same man that had driven her mother to the grave. Laura quickly finalized everything and gave the number to the man who, of course, had changed his name. His name was now Tom. A great name. Not at all suspicious. But Laura had already figured it out. She'd figured it out after a sleepless night. Laura went home to sleep. She didn't go to school that day, but before she fell asleep, she called Christina to her and told her everything. "And he's at our hotel right now. Oh, Christina, I need your help," Laura whispered. "You're going on shift today, right?" "Well, he's staying in room 306. I want you to follow him personally and find out something. There's a reason he's staying at this hotel. I'm sure he's up to something." "You got it, girl." Laura didn't wake up until late afternoon. It was 6 o'clock. She got up because of the terrible headache that had been plaguing her for the last hour. She drank some water, swallowed some painkillers. A few minutes later, Christina burst into the room. She was worried about something. "Christina, what's wrong?" asked Laura, seeing her friend pacing back and forth. "I'm just trying to think of the best way to present this to you. As it comes out, just say it." Christina walked over to Laura and sat down next to her on the bed. "Anyway, I found out what you asked me to find out. You were right, something's up. So, I pretended to be a cleaning lady, and I went into his room. And while I was dusting, I heard him talking on the phone. He started off in French. Of course, I didn't understand anything, but then I heard the phrase, 'tomorrow at 7 in the conference room.' He said it in English. I have no idea who he was talking to, but that's all I found out." "Thank you, Christine. I'll go there tomorrow." Laura was standing at the reception desk, looking in one direction the whole time toward the conference room. "Where are you looking?" "I can't figure it out," Dakota asked her. "I've been like a zombie all day today." "What's wrong with you?" "What time is it?" asked Laura nervously. 6:55, any minute now." "Any minute now what? What if they're talking about something dangerous? I'll be forced to alert management." "No, don't you dare," shouted Laura. "What's the matter with you, Dakota?" Dakota couldn't take it anymore. At that moment, people started coming out of the conference room. Thomas was among them. Laura looked at Dakota with hope in her eyes. "Cover me," she asked, taking off her receptionist costume and putting on her maid's uniform. "What are you doing?" Dakota was indignant. "I want revenge. If you're my friend, don't get in the way, but help me. You have to explain everything to me in order. There's no time. I have to go." Laura took the pre-prepared tea set and went to the hall. Her palms were sweating, but she walked firmly, realizing that this was her chance. The very moment when she could get her revenge. She didn't yet understand what she would do or how she would do it, but she knew for sure that she would win. She entered the hall under the pretense of being asked to bring tea to the guests. The guards let her through. When she entered the hall, she immediately analyzed the situation. In the very center of the round table sat Thomas. Beside him sat some men in black suits. Thomas was saying something in French. Laura couldn't make out the words because he kept slurring his words, and sometimes he was talking nonsense. It was like a 2-year-old babbling. He didn't know French, it was obvious. Finally, Laura could understand what they were discussing, or rather trying to. It was the construction of a whole network of business centers in both Washington and Paris. All of Thomas's coworkers were apparently French. You could read the bewilderment on their faces when Thomas confused words. He should have gone to an interpreter, but apparently, the money ran out. Lara took the opportunity and approached one of the Frenchmen with an offer of tea. As she bent over him to pour the tea, she smiled kindly and quickly whispered to him in French, "Act as if I were talking to you. Here's the tea. This man, Thomas, is not who he says he is. He's a fraud. Don't make a deal with him." Lara straightened up as the others in the room began to leer at her. The Frenchman she was talking to took her advice and pretended not to have heard anything. They were just discussing tea. He smiled at Thomas with the most genuine smile he was capable of. Lara hurriedly removed herself from the hall. She had excellent hearing, but the walls were still quite thin. Lara heard the voice of the Frenchman who said, "I am very interested in your proposal, but before I sign a contract with you, give me a few minutes to think it over." The Frenchman walked out of the hall and noticed Lara signaling him from the right corner. They retreated to the staff room. It was there that Lara decided to expose the scammer. She took out her cell phone and began showing the Frenchman various news announcements. She took newspaper clippings out of her pockets and showed him a picture of her mother, who had passed away because of this madman. The Frenchman was horrified by what he saw, but there was no need to create panic. Thomas could get suspicious and go into hiding. This could not be allowed to happen. He decided to go to the hotel manager. Lara went with him to translate in case of emergency. "It's him," shouted Jack. "Oh my God, call the police," Lara advised. "He'll soon get suspicious and run away. Then we'll never catch him. There's a man like that under the roof of my hotel. That would be such a blow to my reputation. All the more reason you must organize the capture of a criminal who destroys people's lives," Lara said firmly. After a short thought, Jack listened to Lara and called the police in front of the astonished guests. The police officers twisted Thomas's arms and took him for questioning. The Frenchman almost kissed Lara, trying to thank her. She had saved him from such a terrible deal. Surely, that was already up to something. The next day, when Lara arrived at work, she saw a gorgeous bouquet of red roses on her desk. "Who is this for?" she asked Dakota. "And this is from your French admirer," he replied. "He is waiting for you in the main hall." Lara brought the bouquet to her nose and almost fainted from the scent. There was a note enclosed in the flowers, "Mademoiselle, waiting for you in the lobby." It was written in French. Lara immediately rushed to the hall to meet the Frenchman who had arranged such a wonderful surprise for her. He was sitting on a blue sofa and looking at the floor. Lara said hello. He immediately jumped up, started kissing his savior, saying many compliments to her. They sat down on the sofa, and the Frenchman was finally able to introduce himself properly. "My name is Bernard. I am so glad that fate gave me you as a rescue. I don't know how it would have turned out if you hadn't arrived in time. The collapse of our company, the disgrace of France, it would have been a real horror." Lara was embarrassed, laughing at his endless exclamations. "Tell me, why do you speak French so well? It's the first time I meet a young American woman who speaks our language as if it were her own," he marveled. "Thank you," Lara replied with a smile. "I've known French for a long time, and my mother taught it to me as a child, so I've been familiar with the language since I was in diapers. It was easy for me to learn. I'm really a native speaker now." Afterward, Lara began to tell him about her family's history, about her mother's tragic death, about how badly things turned out when they met this horrible man. "I can't imagine what you're experiencing," the Frenchman admitted. "But finally, we were able to catch this fugitive. I'm sure he'll get a big sentence. He's cheated a lot of people." "Yes, that's his only talent," Lara replied gloomily. "I can't know how you feel now, but I can guess how you will feel after my proposal." Lara perked up her ears. The beginning sound found it interesting anyway. Bernard continued, "Because of these circumstances, and with your knowledge of French, I want to invite you to an internship in France. There, I will pay for you to go to university in any specialty you wish. It's a great opportunity to move there and an opportunity to stay there forever. Tell me, would you like to visit Paris?" "Paris?" Lara's eyes lit up. "Of course. How could you say no to something like that? I knew you'd say yes. You're a very, very clever girl. It's rare that I meet such good and conscientious people. You know, there's a reason I invited you to Paris. I asked the hotel manager to give me some information about you. He told me your last name, and I understood. I know one of your relatives who lives in Paris. Really? Lara hesitated. That simply cannot be. All my relatives are here. Though Lara remembered that old album and her mother's stories. She said that only her grandfather had survived. What if he wasn't the only survivor? Maybe there really were relatives left behind who ended up immigrating to France. Oh, I see. You have them in Concilium here. Jack smiled at them. Allow me, Lara, to express to you the deepest gratitude from the whole management of our hotel. You have saved our reputation. That's right, yes, the Frenchman confirmed with a smile. Did you know, miss, that this mademoiselle has aristocratic roots? Really, now, it was the manager's turn to marvel. Isn't that right, Lara? Yes, she was embarrassed. If you're interested, here, she opened the gallery on her phone and showed them both a picture of the very same pendant and some vintage group family photos retaken from an album. How interesting, Jack shook his head. So, what are you going to do now? I'm trying to persuade her to come to France, answered the Frenchman. You bet, he turned to Lara again. I'm not just telling you all this now. I contacted Uriel as soon as I got some information. He was a designer, and now he's retired. I must introduce you. Come on, make up your mind. This is such an opportunity. Lara didn't hesitate for a second. There was nothing else holding her here. She had already said goodbye to her friends from her hometown, and in the capital, she had not yet had time to find real friends. I agree. After a moment of silence, she almost shouted, which frightened the Frenchman. He even clutched at his heart. Don't you want to think about it? The flight's tomorrow. Maybe you'll change your mind, Bernard asked her. You don't want me to go, do you? Lara grinned. You saved my business. How could I not want that? And your relative is already waiting for you. It's just that you made up your mind so quickly. I didn't think it would be so easy, and I have nothing to look for or wait for. I'm a free man, not tied to places or people. Everyone I cared about has either said goodbye to me or is already gone. In that case, I'll meet you at the airport tomorrow. Don't be late. Don't miss your chance. After 24 hours, Lara enjoyed the view of narrow streets and walks on the cobblestone sidewalks of Paris. The smell of coffee and croissant was in the air. She hadn't had breakfast yet, so she was salivating at every smell. The French really are real culinary experts. The cab driver decided to show her around the city without charging her extra. He even gave her a mini tour. This is the iconic Eiffel Tower, and this is the cafe from Emily in Paris. Lara couldn't believe she was in this fairy tale. Just a day ago, she'd been sleep-deprived in a cold hotel somewhere. Here, the sun was shining brightly, promising a wonderful day, many wonderful days. They pulled up to a 4-story white building. The entrance to it was in the courtyard, so Lara walked on her own. But she didn't have to think about where to go or what to say. At the gate stood an old man in plaid pants and a jacket with a bow tie. Lara intuitively knew that she had to go to him. Good afternoon, Lara, the old man greeted her in French. I am glad that you finally came and honored me with your visit. Come in. They entered through the gate and then turned left, where there was a door to the so-called entrance. Except it wasn't an entryway at all. It turned out that all 4 floors belonged to Lara's relative from France. She was stunned when she found out. I'm sorry, I still don't know your name, Lara remarked as they entered the living room. I used to be called Robert, the old man replied in English. But here, I decided to take a different name for a long time. Now, I've been Jew. It suits you very well, Lara complimented. Thank you, Jacques smiled politely. He offered her a seat on the sofa and began to pour tea. I'm so glad I found you. I didn't realize I had relatives in America, just like I didn't realize I had relatives in Paris, Lara joked. I found out about you completely by accident. Yes, I see. Bernard told me everything. I'm sorry to startle you with such a question, but do you plan to stay in Paris? Bernard suggested. I get an education here. I don't know what will happen, but I've accepted his offer. I don't know yet what the housing situation will be. Oh, there's no question about that. I have a very cozy apartment, almost in the center of Paris, also left by my ancestors. Our ancestors are very special people, I can tell. In fact, they lost a lot, but they moved here and started to build a new life, working part-time here and there. When I was young, I started out as an ordinary laborer, but when I was 40, I changed careers and became a designer. Yes, Bernard said, you were a designer, former designer. I don't have the energy to do it anymore. My grandson inherited my business and my brand. In fact, he's coming to visit me today from an important meeting. You wouldn't mind meeting him, would you? Of course not. I'd love to make new acquaintances. That's fine. And now, I suggest you have breakfast. I'm sure you're very tired from the road and haven't eaten yet. It's rare to get good food on an airplane these days. I couldn't agree more, Lara smiled. All day long, she and Jacques talked. Lara told him her story and how she was lucky to be here. It really had all happened so suddenly. Before I knew it, I was already in Paris. It was only a short time ago that I was celebrating my coming of age, she said. The doorbell rang. Jacques went to meet his grandson, and in the meantime, Lara quickly grabbed her mirror and began to dress up. There's my grandson, Jacques exclaimed happily as he escorted the embarrassed boy into the living room. Good evening, nice to meet such a lovely lady, Jacques' grandson kissed Lara's hand. I'm William, my grandfather has told me a lot about you. Are you Lara? I am, Lara nodded in agreement. She was a little shocked. No one had ever greeted her so gallantly before, but she would probably get used to it soon. The French love body contact. He was buzzing me about some American relative coming to visit him. I couldn't turn down the opportunity to see you, William continued. They got to talking. It turned out that William spoke English very well. Grandfather always wanted his grandchildren to know their roots. You know, I've never been to America. I'd like to go there. I hear you have a lot of fun there. There's something going on every day, Lara laughed. Yeah, that's true, the rumors don't lie. As they were talking, Jacques came up to them and interrupted them. He was holding a cloth bag and crying. What's wrong with you? Lara got worried. What's wrong? Do you need help? No, Jacques denied it. I'm sorry, I let my feelings get the better of me. It's just that this pouch contains something that might upset you. Jacques gently placed the pouch in Lara's palm. She didn't open it right away, afraid of what she might see. She untied the black ribbon and put her hand inside. She felt something glass or metal. Her curiosity couldn't wait any longer. She looked at what now lay in her hand, a gold pendant with a bright blue stone, caused a storm of emotion in her. She could not control her feelings and cried. This was the pendant that turned out to be the key to all the events that had happened. It was all about that pendant. Where did you get it? Stammering, she asked Jacques. My good friend Bernard gave it to me and told me to give it to you. He was given the pendant during the investigation. The crook kept it in his safe all this time. He didn't even sell it though he was going to. It's about time they stopped him. It was the only thing of value our family had left. Everything was either burned or looted, and this pendant was lost. At least that's what I thought until now. I am very happy that it is now coming back to you, as it should. Thank you, Lara whispered and took this heart of the ocean, as her mother called it. From that moment on, Lara's life took on new colors. She went to university to study international relations and began to immerse herself in the culture of France. Her desire to see the world grew more and more. All the while, she was in contact with William. He turned out to be a real gentleman. He invited her on dates, gave her flowers. Her first kiss took place at the Eiffel Tower. What else could a girl dream of? And soon, they were married, played a loud wedding, which seemed to know the whole of Paris. Lara was flattered by such attention. She felt special and free. The bitterness of loss faded into the background. Now, in her life, in priority was her family. Family life. Several years had passed since then. Lara walked along the rain-soaked asphalt, holding the hand of her 5-year-old son, Pablo. They had arrived in America a few hours ago. William was walking next to her. They were wearing black raincoats and holding umbrellas. "Mom, what's that for?" "All the way there," my son whined. "Why couldn't I stay home?" "It's important for all of us, honey," Lara explained to him. "You'll understand that in the future." She took him in her arms so they walked faster. Soon, they reached the very same grave. On the tombstone, the name Anastasia was visible. The dirt had made some of the symbols illegible, however, Lara felt in her heart that she was in the right place. Pablo and William stayed back, and Lara walked right up to the grave. She laid flowers and said, "Hi, Mom. Thought I'd come visit you. It's been a long time since I've seen you. Don't think I've forgotten. I was just building a happy family." A light breeze fell on Lara, which she took as a sign that her mother could hear her. "Mom," Lara cried, "I miss you so much." She bowed her head. "I miss your words, your support. You know, I live in Paris now. You could be a real chef there. I'm sure that's what your new life will be like." Lara wiped her tears and took a small cloth bag out of her pocket. "Mommy, I brought you something." She took a pendant out of the bag and put it next to the flowers. "Look, Mom, I found it. It came back to us. Now you can rest easy. After me, it will go to my son, your grandson." Pablo yanked his father. "Why is Mommy crying? Is she sick?" "No, honey, she just decided to finally let go of her past," his father answered him seriously. Lara stood up, shook off the last drops of tears, and smiled warmly at her baby. "This is where your grandmother sleeps. Eternal sleep, Pablo. She would be very happy to see you. She sees me," suddenly very seriously answered her son. The parents smiled at the child's directness, took their son by the hands, and walked towards the exit from the pogost, past the tall dark fir trees, past the old and new tombstones, through the still silence, home to their present and future. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.